Okay, guys, sorry, that took a while. We are setting up some new gear, and somehow that never works the right way, right? So we now switch back to our original setup with Wirecast, but I had to do that really fast, so I'm sorry it took us a few minutes. Okay, welcome to another episode of Digital Classroom, and today it's all about retouching, and I'm just looking at the intro because, of course, we have to start a Digital Classroom the way that it's supposed to be, right? And because everything has changed now, let me see. Where's my promo? And you know what? There it is. Okay, there we go. Hey guys, first thank you so very much for BenQ, Rogue, and of course Cascable and Calibrite for making Digital Classroom possible for all these years. And thank you so very much for you guys for watching all these years. Now, during the Digital Classroom, we've done a lot of things. We've done photo shoots, we've done retouching sessions, street and travel photography, we took you on location, and one of the things that I couldn't do for a while was actually the retouching part. And you guys have been asking me so many times, like, hey, how do you do this? What is this in your workflow? So we actually decided to do a whole class only about retouching. And this one is going to be interesting. I'm going to show you some stuff that I didn't know before when I started preparing for this one. And of course, something that has just been released by Adobe. And today, I hope everything will go all right because I'm streaming and screen capturing. If this works, we can do it more. Otherwise, we have to get that other setup working. And what is that other setup working? Well, the whole setup, our iPad. Imagine that with Camo Studio. The only problem was everything worked, but it couldn't connect to YouTube. So that's something we still have to figure out. But for now, let's switch over to my other view where you can see my desktop. And let's hope that today everything goes well. Now, Lightroom is, of course, the place where all my images live. Lightroom is the place where you do retouching before you go into Photoshop. So is Photoshop still relevant now that we have Lightroom? Yes, of course, because there is stuff that just goes way faster when you go into Photoshop. And Lightroom is great, don't get me wrong, but there are things that go faster in Lightroom than it does in Photoshop. You get it? Courses for courses. Now, Photoshop and Adobe and Lightroom is of course something that's supposed to work together. So when you are in Lightroom and you want to go to Photoshop, you can use a shortcut, and that's Control E. Now, Control A, or the E from Edward. I'm Dutch. So let's first start out with some images that we want to take some reflections of. And you probably already see them here. So we have this one, and that's a really challenging one, I think. Then we have this one. Ooh, that goes wrong too. Now, you know that there's a new option to take reflections out of glasses and out of your windows, right? And it's been just released by Adobe. So let's take a look at it because it's in Camera Raw. And I'm going to show you the stuff that can go wrong before I'm going to show you how it goes right. So let's open this up in Photoshop with Command E or Control E. And there we have our let's go View, Fit on Screen. Okay, there we go. So the thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that we are in Camera Raw. So go Filters, go for Camera Raw filter. This is what I did the first time. And now there's supposed to be a new option for your artificial intelligence. But it isn't there. So first go to your settings up here and make sure that under Technology Previews you enhance your new AI features. Yeah, okay. Now you have to restart Photoshop, but I already did this. Now, where can it go wrong? We are so used to using Camera Raw as a plugin, right? That we go from Lightroom into here. But what happens when you do it now? Now, let's go for our remove. And there we have them, distraction removal, but hey, that doesn't work. And there's this little exclamation, reflection removal is currently not compatible with this photo format. And I was just going like, that's weird. It's a normal photo format. So what did I do wrong? If you use it as a plugin in Photoshop, it's not Camera Raw, it's supposed. So let's close Photoshop. Don't save, of course. Let's go back into Lightroom. And let's just find the location of these images. So let's go for Show in Finder. Now, as soon as I have these images in Finder, I can literally select them all. as you can see here. So we have a few selected. And now when I open them up, I can go open up with, and now in this case I have to go to other, and go into Adobe Photoshop. Okay, and now I'm in the raw developer from Photoshop, and now I can do it. So let's start with our Batman. Now this was shot during one of our trips, and it's behind glass. And wouldn't it be awesome if we saw Batman without the glass and all that reflection and that glare? Yeah, well, thanks to Adobe, no problem. Let's go here. Remove our reflections, and watch this. And the first time I saw it, it just literally blew my mind. I was going like, wow, this is awesome. So it's removing the reflections, and this of course takes a little while. And it's almost done. And look at that, isn't that freaking awesome? And the cool thing is, however, that you have a slider here and you can bring your reflections back, or you can see just the reflections. Hey, Anouk, how are you doing? And she's gone. So I think Anouk is back. Don't you agree? Yep, without any doubt. Okay, so let's see what it does with something that's a little bit more difficult. Like, for example, this one, where it's literally not very clear what is the reflection and what is not the reflection, and how will he solve that thing underneath? I think this is interesting because this is still brand new. This is still in the preview. So whatever happened now, it's in preview, guys. Remember this. This is not a final version, and I think that's pretty impressive already. Okay, so officially, of course, this is a reflection and this is a reflection. This is a reflection, but let's look at this is what it takes out, and this is what it creates, and this is the original. And I think it did a pretty good job. Now the cool thing is you can be very creative with this. Look at this. Just move this around, and maybe in your settings change a little bit in your contrast, add some shadow detail, work a little bit with your temperature. Maybe a little bit of vibrance. And there we go. Give it some clarity. As you can see, it's already triggering your creative mind, right? Okay, let's go for this one. Okay, this one will be tricky too. Let's see what happens. Take out the reflections. And I think this is interesting, you know, Adobe keeps pushing the limits on what you can do with normal editing. And this is something that has driven me nuts in the past. When somebody would have asked me, like, can you take the reflections out? I would have looked at the image and go like, yeah, but it will take hours and hours. And now look at this. Isn't this just cool? So this is what it takes out. And now you can add, there we go. And now you can just add Chucky back in. Wow. Okay, let's go for this one. And this one, this one is relatively easy because the only thing you see is some orbs. It's not UFO, sorry. It's some orbs, some reflections. So I think this one will be okay, but I take out the orbs for the very simple reason. I don't think the software knows that that is a reflection. I think it will just see this as a normal object in there because I think it just looks at some minor differences. Okay, there we go. Look at this. And the orb is just way too obvious. So this is what it takes out. And this is what it leaves in. That's okay. And finally, I wanted to try out this one. And this one blew my mind because I would have expected it to take it out slightly. But what happened, you will see in a second. I didn't expect this. And it has everything to do with where the software focuses on probably. And in this case, it focuses on something different than you might think. So let's see what happens. There we go. So where's what did you do? You just removed my main subject and you left in the reflections. But that's the cool part because look at this. And that's the nice thing about this plugin. This is what I absolutely love, that slider. There we go. There we have him. And this is impressive because look at the original. You see, with the whole lines in his face, there we go, and it's all gone. I don't care that they switched it over, that I think this is the original, but hey, this is really impressive technology. Okay, so that's for now. Let's go back to Lightroom. So let's cancel this. So make sure that you are in Camera Raw, straight into Camera Raw. So not in, come on, close. Ah, okay, yes. There we go. So don't open it as a filter, and I didn't find it yet in a Lightroom, so make sure that you do it that way. Okay, so one of the things that we love to do during our workshops is, of course, work with gels and colors. And of course, you can combine all the three colors together, red, green, and blue, and create nice white light. And when you do this on 3 different strokes, you can get some really amazing effects on your model. But what if you want to go just a little bit further? So let's say that we take this image, and I'm not going to go into Photoshop yet. This is shot with our model Claudia, and I really like that all the colors here blend together, but there's a little bit too much green, and I don't think the red is vibrant enough. Now the cool thing when you combine colors is that you always have to recognize that color triangle, your red, green, and blue, and in the middle that white point on your body curve. And that means that you can also manipulate those colors because they're all connected. So if you change your hue or your saturation or your luminance of the whole global colors, everything will change. So where can you do it? Well, you can do that here in your temperature and in your tint. So for example, let's say we went a little bit more blue, or in this case, I of course want to go the opposite side, yellow, but I don't want to lose the magentas, or maybe I want in more green. So let's see what I like. I actually think the other way around is maybe more interesting. Yeah, there we go. This is way more intense. Okay. Now, of course, you can also manipulate the colors separately. So what I now did is combining the whole color triangle and changing it around. But when you go into here, you can see that you have an HSL or color mixer. Oh, and with the color mixer, you can, of course, do a lot more stuff. For example, you can do point color in a Lightroom. We don't want that. You can do your tone curve. You go here into your curves. But of course, and this is the more interesting part, and you can also dive into your, sorry, I have to go down. There we go, into your color grading itself. And in your color grading itself, you can just move around everything you want. So if you want in your shadows a little bit less, like for example here, move that around and move that down or up. And let's go for this part. You can really nicely tint an image this way. And there we go. Okay, use some blending maybe to make it a little bit harsher. So you can already do a lot in Photoshop Lightroom, but what if we go into Lightroom itself? So let's go, oh sorry, into Photoshop of course, Command E, let's go into Photoshop. Now into Photoshop we can of course push it a little bit further, but the first thing I always do is clean up my mess. In other words, some things you just can't in the shot. So let's take this one out. As you can see, I leave the light in and that has a purpose. And you can do content aware fill in this case, it goes fast enough. There we go. And you can do it here. And of course, generative fill you can use, but content aware fill just works as well for these. I do have to be honest, this one is a little bit rough. Let's remove that one too. There we go. Okay, so let's say that you really like your shot, but you go like, I wish there was a little bit more oomph in the shot. Now, as you can see, I already have the lens flare in my image. And if I look at the shot like this, I think it doesn't need a lot. It just needs a little bit. So one of the things that I love to do is work with color channels. Now, when we look at our channels, we can actually see that our color exists of 3 colors, red, green, and blue. Those are our primary colors. That also means that we can work channels. For example, I can select the red channel, the blue channel, or the green channel. Now, let's create a new layer just for fun. Let's create a new layer. And let's go for the bottom layer again. And let's go into channels. And let's select, for example, in this case, let's do the blue channel. And let's do Command A, Command C, select everything and copy. And let's go back for layers and let's copy that in that empty layer. Now you might think, hey Frank, that's cool, now you have a black and white image. It's not a black and white image. This is the red channel. It's absolutely not a black and white image. It's the red channel. And that means that we can combine that with our red, green and blue channels, which we already have. So now we actually have RGBB, which is nice, I think. But as you see now, it doesn't really work, right? So we now have it on top of each other. And that's the thing with Photoshop. When you do this with, for example, film, you can see through it. Photoshop doesn't do that. It just places it at the top and there's a layer underneath. So how do you show those layers? Well, there's a simple trick for this, you might say, and that's the opacity slider. So just move this down and there you go. There's your color image. But you might wonder, like, why did you all the trouble to make your image look worse instead of better? That's the thing. Don't use the opacity slider. There are blending modes built into a Photoshop. And don't worry, if this is too simple for you guys, it's going to be more interesting later on. But I want to also explain some stuff that's basic for you guys, a little bit more for the people that start out. So the blending modes you can find here. Now, in all honesty, I don't know what they all do. I just go through. I hope that somebody else in the world one day will tell me what they exactly do. I just look at what I like. So let's go for soft light in most cases, and there we go. And as you can see here, this creates a really nice stark contrast on my model. The only thing is I don't really like it here. So create a layer mask. And that's the cool thing about Photoshop. You can always create layer masks. Now in this case, I'm going to do a hide all. Now hide all means that it saves you the trouble of finding out where is the problem. You now just paint in the problem areas where you can see it. Now why do I explain it like this? You can also do a hide layers or a show layers. Now, when you know for sure that there are no artifacts in your image, you can of course do a show. But the moment you saw, like here, you saw those artifacts in your image, I always prefer to do the hide option for the very simple reason when I paint it in, I exactly know where I painted in. When I paint it out, I can always forget something and then maybe a client will zoom in your image and go like, hey, you forgot something. Of course, it's black, the layer, so we're going to take a brush with white and I'm going to paint over the areas where I want my effect to show up. In this case, that's the face. Look at that. And of course here, a little bit on the clothing. Now, I didn't change anything in my image. This is still my original image, but as you can see, it looks totally different. Now, these are techniques that you could also use in the darkroom, of course, so I don't see anything wrong with doing some stuff like this. Where it becomes a little bit more tricky for a lot of you guys is actually what I'm going to do now. Now, one of my favorite plugins for special effects is without any doubt Boris FX. Now, you probably know Boris FX from Star Trek, from Stranger Things. Actually, a lot of the stuff that you see in Hollywood or on Netflix, all those special effects are done with the big software package from Boris FX, Sapphire, I believe it's called. I'm going to use the smaller one, and that's Boris FX, and that's especially for photographers. And I can highly recommend getting this one because this will blow your mind. This is awesome. So let's go for optics. And the thing that I want to do is I don't like to fake stuff. If something is there, I love to enhance it, but I don't want to fake stuff. So in other words, there is a lens flare there. I know I got it, but now I want to create it a little bit better. Now, in all honesty, in 90% of the cases, I won't do this. I'm just doing this to show you guys what's possible. I still am a little bit on that area where I go like, hey, if it's there and it looks like that, don't touch it. It's great. It can be better, but leave it like that. However, if I take 3 shots and this one I absolutely love, but the one where the expression is so much better and I miss that lens flare, I have no problem by adding in the lens flare because, you know, I can recreate it without any problems. And I think for me, that's a little bit the barrier where I find artificial intelligence acceptable or not. Text to image, no way. That's not art. Using it to extend your backdrop, hey, why not? The backdrop wasn't wide enough. It's not you as a photographer that made a mistake. Let's use the technique to extend your backdrop. Creating a lens flare that wasn't there, yeah, that's a little bit of a problem because lens flares and light creates depth and shadow. If you create something that wasn't there, it doesn't look natural. But if it was already there, without just frame by accident, hey, come on, just put it there. So let's find out how that works. So let's go for lighting effects. As you can see, I've placed it here. Now, of course, this is a little bit too much. So let's go a little bit smaller. There we go. And of course, you can turn it on and off to see the effect. Now, I don't like the color that much. I actually like the color to be a little bit more on the blue side. And there we go. And as you can see here, turn it on and off. It just blends out that artifact a little bit better. As you can see here, it just looks nicer. And again, I have no problem by adding something like this in my shots, if I need to. But I prefer to do it right. Now, of course, you can also say like, hey, I don't like this. I think that's fake, and I totally agree. So what you can do is you can do this. And in my opinion, I think they should be just a little bit more bright in the center, and the outer brightness, I don't like it. Although those are those rings, I don't like that. And let's take that out. There we go. And of course you can choose different elements. I also like this one a lot. This one is a little bit too much for me. Ooh, that's too fake. That one is cool too. Okay, but let's leave it for this. Now, the nice thing that I like about Boris FX is, and that also means, let me check with Anouk if the stream is still active. Okay. As it looks now, okay, there we go. It's active again. Oh, this doesn't look right. Okay, so anyway, we're going to continue. Let's see what happens. So I absolutely love the film modus inside Boris FX. So let's go for Film Lab. And let's just quickly for film stocks. As you can see, we have a lot of options here. I want to go for something that's nice and moody. But doesn't give me too much shadow. And doesn't have to be over the top. Yeah, I like that. Okay, we can go on forever, but let's make a decision. I think I'm going to go for this one. And you can still change your opacity. So let's dive back into Photoshop with this one. Now, as you can see, with Boris FX, you can just add some really nice extra touches to your images. And it's something that you shouldn't do in all your images, but if you just miss that lens flare, just as explained before, why, right? Okay, so Boris FX is one of the software packages that I use a lot for example, your cosplay, creating three-dimensional backdrops for example, a science fiction set. But I'm not a big fan of using it for adding stuff that wasn't there in a natural looking shot. So I'm a big guy going for, if I have lighting there, I can enhance it. If it wasn't there, well, don't add it in Photoshop. Okay, let's take a look at this one, and let's go through another plugin of mine that I really love to use. But first, let's develop this into a better photo, because this is a little bit too dark, So let's open it up. And the reason I'm opening this up is not because I made a mistake with my lighting. As you can see, it gives me the proper detail everywhere. So the image as it is now, it's great. There's nothing wrong with it. And the problem is I know what I'm going to do with my retouching. And that means that I know that I need to open up the shadows a little bit. In the retouching part, I'm going to push the shadows down in that preset. So that means that I need to open it up a little bit more while I now still am in the raw converter where there's less noise and a lot more detail. Of course, I can also choose to lower my highlights. If I want to replace, for example, the flash panel that you see on top with something else, lower the lightness. The highlights, and just replace it with, for example, something from Boris FX, or you can just create it like this and only take out the stand. For this shot, I'm gonna actually use it as it is. So I'm gonna make it blur just a little bit more. There we go. And at that point, you can also lower this a little bit. And don't feel compelled to use contrast now. As you can see here, that really helps, but you don't want to do that because you know you're gonna retouch later in Photoshop. Okay, so let's open this up into Photoshop. A connection is established again, so I hope you didn't lose anything in between. Now, this is a little bit of a trouble because we have that ceiling, we have the stand. It doesn't really look nice, right? So let's see what we can do with artificial intelligence in this case. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my stand is out. So let's select this. And as mentioned before of this kind of stuff, you can just feel it. Goes a lot faster and you don't lose any credits. But as you can see here, it creates something that we don't want to see. So let's see what happens when we use generative fill. So just generate. Now the cool thing about generative fill is that it sometimes works way better and sometimes it just doesn't work at all for these kinds of stuff. And what do I mean with this kinds of stuff is we have a lot of smoke there. And with generative fill, I find out that sometimes it just gives me that yellow error for, hey, you broke some rules from Adobe, and especially with smoke and the longer rectangulars, it can sometimes give. Overall, I think it's a lot less than when it started, and that was almost every shot that I had that warning signal, and I haven't seen it for a while now. So, and there we go. As you can see here, this is much nicer than generative, content to web fill. You can choose between. I'm not going to upscale it at the moment. I'm just going to say, okay, this is fine. Layer, flatten. And here you can really see the power of generative fill, because if I want to take this out, I can just be a little bit sloppy, select part of the motorcycle, just do this. And this is something that I can't absolutely do with content aware. It's too large, and I can't select anything of the motorbike because it will really mess that up. And generative fill is absolutely awesome for this. And you will see that in a second. There we go. It's no problem at all. And that's impressive. Oh, I love that it adds that little bit of a reflection there. Because we're streaming, I am blending my image because we saw some red lines on the YouTube stream, so I hope everything works out. Same here, we're going to select the top part. I'm going to take a little bit of the hair here. There we go. And in this case, I'm just going to type in a reddish, smoke. You never know what's going to happen. Now, normally, of course, you do your selection, and then I out. But for a stream, I have to do it fast because I don't want to bore you guys with selections that take forever. And select subject, it does work, but in these kinds of shots, you can always try it, but most of the time it will select too much because there's so much smoke and everything is dark. Okay, let's see what Photoshop thinks about. There we go, that looks okay. I actually think the first one is, yeah, that's more than acceptable for now. Okay, so I told you guys that I also have some other plugins that I really like. And one of the plugins that I use a lot nowadays is actually from Skylum. And it's called Luminar Neo. Now, Luminar Neo is similar to Lightroom, but it's also totally different. Where Lightroom is great in enhancing your RAW files and getting the most out of those files and getting them color accurate and making sure that your distortion is right, there's no grammatic aberration. It's really a RAW developer aimed at your camera. And nowadays there are a lot more like effects and whatever. You know, Lightroom is very, very extensive. However, when you look at Luminar Neo, it's set up slightly different. For me, it's more aimed at enhancing an image that's already there. Of course, you still have under edits, you still have, edits, let's go. You still have your develop module where you can do your exposure, etc. That's the same as, of course, in Lightroom. But as soon as you go lower, we have erase, structure, color, black and white. And here it already gets more interesting. Like, for example, sun rays. I don't want to know where, where you want to have suns here. But as you can see, it adds more to the image. So let's see what we can do in an image like this with a Luminar. Now, first of all, I already did my stuff in Photoshop, in Lightroom, so I don't need to do anything more about my develop module. So let's go into details. Let's go first into structure. Now, structure gives me oomph in my shot. So let's add some structure. I love oomph. As you can see here, it also adds some extra lightness in your shot. So make sure that you later on contrast that out. That's why we raise the shadows a little bit, so everything will be perfectly set up for that. Add some details, small details. Let's zoom in to 100%. I always zoom in to the face to make sure that I don't overdo it. I want a little bit of a painterly look in my shot, so I can push it just a little bit. You can always look the eye. Check the eye, to see what it does. That looks nice. Okay, now let's go for a vignette. I love vignettes. Now the nice thing about Luminar is that you can actually choose your subject. So let's choose my subject here. As you can see here, now I'm already losing some of my black details. So up until now, everything works out as planned. Let's do some dramatic. There we go. It really brings out those blacks. And again, before and after. And that really makes it shine. And mood. Mood is where I change the color of my image. This is for me the most important creative part. And this is also why a lot of companies email me, and probably also to you guys, can we do your retouching? Can we please do your retouching? No. For me, retouching is such a vital part of the whole creative process that I don't think anybody else can do the retouching, because then it wouldn't be my shot anymore. So yeah. And I think the tinting in the shot, that's the most important part for me, because this is where my image really comes to life. If the Mac doesn't crash. Doesn't like this. I was a little bit afraid of that because we're already streaming and running. So yeah. Well, let's give it a few seconds. No. Okay. And there we go. Okay, let's do that again, but now I'm going to show you differently. So let's go into Luminar Neo. Normally it doesn't crash, don't worry. I think it's because we're now streaming everything and I didn't really set everything up the way that it's supposed to be, because I had to do it really fast. So what you can do is go to my presets, and here we have all the presets. So let's just find one that I really like the nice addition. There we go. And now you can still go back into edit. I don't like the vignetting here. It's just, it doesn't fit. So normally you would go into tools and you go like, hey, this is weird. Everything that, it doesn't add up. And that's because in Luminar, you have a second option here. So besides your tools, you have your edits. And in your edits, you have everything that I did in my preset. So if I want to add stuff, I can go into tools and, for example, do another, I don't know, let's do some, let's see. I want to do something that's obvious. Let's do sun rays. There we go. And now when I go back to edits, you can see that we now added sun rays on top. Now, of course, I don't want sun rays, so we can just delete it like that. Yeah. So let's choose my subject in this case. And there we go. Okay. Let's see the before and after. As you can see, still enough detail in the blacks. That's why we raised the blacks at the start, but it all now fits nicely together. And look at how much more detail you see here. It really jumps out. So let's apply. And now let's go back into Photoshop. I hope. And see the difference. So you can now see it popping into, there it is. Okay, so that's one part. Of course, we have some more stuff that's interesting. So let's go back into Lightroom. And let's take a nice portrait of, let's say, Claudia. Where are you? Here. Okay, let's open up and this one in Photoshop. As you can see, Claudia looks really nice. She does retouching, but I want to show you something else. So Skylum or Luminar is one of my favorite software packages for presets. A lot of the software that I use now, of the looks that I use, are actually built into Luminar Neo for me by presets. Now, why do I love Neo so much? It's because of the skin retouching. The skin is really nice. It does it over the whole body of the model, and somehow it just looks really natural, and it's really fast. I don't need to do any cloning afterwards. I don't need to do any layering. It just works. And because there's also a great LUT table in there for the looks, I'm fine with Neo. And recently they released something else, and this is really interesting, and I want to show you this. This is called Eper, and it's brand new. And I haven't played with it a lot, but every time that I play with it, I go like, I really have to start using this a lot more. There's only one thing that I don't like, and I hope they will update it someday. So let's go into our model's face, and this is more aimed at the portrait photographers. So we still have everything like our develop module, exposure, contrast, highlights. We still have curves, color, black and white, sharpen, details. You have a lot of stuff there. Of course, structure and detail is important. You have your curves, as mentioned before. Color, you can do a lot, including HSL, so hue, saturation, luminance for every color. So it's a very complete package, but where it becomes interesting is actually when you start to go here into the face. Now it selects the faces in the frame, as you can see here. This is Claudia. You can also say elderly, child, teen, individual, female, male. Now look very closely. I'm going to show it on 200% because on YouTube I'm pretty sure that it will destroy a lot of the detail. Okay, so 200%. Okay, so Claudia already has great skin. This is without any retouch. So let's do a blemish removal and just put it on full power, just for YouTube. As you can see here, this just disappeared. So that's great, that already works. So now when I move it around, as you can see, it just removed that one part, and it's on full power. In other words, it doesn't take away stray hairs, which I don't want it to take away because that has nothing to do with skin. So stay away from the hairs, unless I tell you to, and I didn't. This is great. Now let's do some freckles removal, which he doesn't have. So see how the software reacts to not having any freckles. Will it create any artifacts? No, that's nice. Okay. Now let's go down, and this is the part that's really nice and natural. Skin smoothing. Again, for YouTube, let's put it on 100%. It has to calculate, but watch this. Now this is super subtle, but so nice. Now, of course, when you want to have a nice soft skin, you want the skin to radiate just a little bit. So why not do a little bit of face brightening? There we go. And a little bit of shine removal. Now look at the difference. How subtle, but how much of a difference that makes in your shot. Great, right? Yeah, I really like. But there's more. Now, this is the part where I go like, I'm never going to use this. Not even if a client asks me about it. A lot of you guys will probably go like, oh, this is something that I love to use for my clients. This is something that I really want. So if you really want it, it's there. So let's go for a body. And let's first, of course, slim the face. Now, in my opinion, yeah, it just doesn't look natural. Hey, sometimes you have a model that really wants it, and the software does it great. When I say it doesn't look natural, I don't mean the software. I mean, for me, Claudia looks like this, and when I flatten her face, she looks like something from a cartoon somehow. The eyes, this is really interesting. When you go into, again, let's go for 200%. And with the eyes, I can now actually do an eyebrow. Again, I wouldn't do this, but maybe just very subtle. You know, sometimes you have those images that are almost there, but you need just a hinge. Look at that. Very subtle. Maybe. Eyebrow position. Where do you want your eyebrows? Again, not something that I would do. And your eyebrows distance. This is, however, great if you have problems with shadows. Sometimes just a little bit of a nudge can create something interesting, because the shadow is just a little bit off, and you can choose to clone it out or just move the eyebrows a little bit. It just gives you another option. You can change the nose. Again, not stuff that I would do, but hey, it's there, so why not? Nose bridge shape, as you can see here, it just changes the bridge. You can also make it. Yeah, I don't know. It's subtle, so it's okay. The nose tip. Again, I don't recognize my model. But at least it doesn't look like a witch. You know, sometimes with software you can make it like this. This is still very subtle and nice. Now, you can also oh, look at this. So you can make your nose do the samba. That's cool. Can we also make it go up and down? Oh my. This is really nice. As you can imagine, I didn't play with the nose yet. Okay, Lips position, same here. You can move them, you can move them down. You can change the shape of your upper lip, make it smaller. This is something that can be interesting because with makeup, sometimes you make your lips a little bit too large, and then when you have software that can just correct the makeup a little bit, I wouldn't have any problems with that. Now, I told you guys I have a real big problem with changing is the body itself. Now this is the part where I think you shouldn't change anything, but hey, if the client really wants it, maybe just a few pounds. Less, of course. But be careful when you do stuff like this. This side, I wouldn't recommend. This side, like that. Now, this was the one that actually caught me by surprise. Like, hey, the abdomen, look at that. This is nice. Now, in this case, because he has her hand over there, it doesn't look natural. But imagine what you can do with stuff like this. It's creating new options for example, if you have clothing that fit 100% right, you can of course do a puppet wrap or whatever you want to do in Photoshop, but this might just look a little bit more natural when you move it around like that. Again, the body type, I have a little bit of a problem with explaining this kind of stuff to you guys because I would never use it myself. I think it's not realistic. However, the skin smoothing, I have no problems with it all, and I actually thought this was awesome in this software. But if that was the only part, I would have stopped now because I would go like, okay, that's the only part that I found interesting. And because I said I would have stopped now, you probably already guessed there's something that literally blew my mind. And again, it's one of those things that I will probably not use in my own work because I love to create it on set. But oh my, this is a lot of fun to work with. Go here into your creative. You already guessed it, it's going to be creative. So I'm going to change this all the way over to the side. There we go. I'm going to add a light shape. And I want to show it on canvas. So here's my light shape. Let's move that to the side. As far as you can see now, there's nothing going on, right? It's just a light shape. So why? Okay, now let's give it an amount. Okay, now you can already see light, right? Let's make sure that there's some depth to the light. Okay, let's add some color to the light. Let's make it yellow. No, green, sorry. Let's make it green. Awesome. I don't like green. Let's make it blue. That's better. Okay, let's saturate it a lot. There we go. And now let's create some really nice smoothness and light contrast. Interesting. Look at this. Turn the light off. And now we have new light on our model. This is cool. Think about what you can do with whole sets where you can just move your light around. But it doesn't look really interesting, right? Let's create something nicer. So let's go for light customization for a texture. You can do a greenery, monsters, palm leaf, shutters, tree shadows, vintage windows, why not? Water droplets and water reflections. Now, if you go like, yeah, now that isn't interesting. That looks more like a gobo projector. Yes, it does. How about creating something that can actually move a little bit more challenging? So let's go for dots. And let's change the scale. There, look at this. This is cool, right? And now you can also change the whole look and place it exactly where you want. As mentioned before, I have my huge problem, but it's also so much fun. Because it's not natural, but man, it is cool. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Is this acceptable to play with? I don't think so. To use it in your work, yeah, maybe it is. It would be great if you could create this on set and then just use it to add some extra mood. But overall, I think it's great. So let's see if we can put some light on the face. I never tried that before, so let's create this. And then, of course, I have to use white light. Yeah, that doesn't look natural, you see. But maybe if we smoothen it, it's already smoothened. So. Let me see the size. Yeah, you can't change the size. Maybe the depth. Yeah, and then it does it for everything. Okay, that's okay. So anyways, you can see you can play around with this forever. I think it does something weird on the lips. Overall, yeah, really cool. And if you want to replace one, just do this and remove. There you go. Okay, of course, we also have our LUTs, where you can choose again your creative styles, for example, beiging, grays, red trace. It is a little bit the same like with Neo. Vignetting key. If you want to go really funky. Okay, so anyway, so this is the new Eper T, and if you do a lot of fashion photography or model photography, mostly on the face, I think it's a great option. The thing that I would add a little bit more is also use it on the body of the model, and that's something that Neo does. When we go into Neo, very quickly go into the skin. And at this moment, Eper T only does the face as far as I know. So let's go for edits and zoom in here and look at her arms. When I now go for skin, it still says portrait. When you go for skin and you do it all the way up, look, it also does the skin on her body. And this is for me a big plus. I don't have to think about doing the arms and the hands. It's just the face and the rest of the body. And I think they will add this to Eper T very quickly. And then it's, I think, my preference over Neo. At this moment, Neo still wins for me because it does the whole body. But I think when they add the whole body to Eper T, I'm going to switch over to Eper T. And it's from the same company, so hey, there's no problems there. So let's do yes. Okay. Well, let's see what we can do more. Because, of course, we want to make sure that we use our artificial intelligence the correct way, right? So let's take this shot, for example. Command go into Photoshop. And I just want to show you the difference, because we all know, of course, content-aware fill. So let's do that. Let's do content-aware. So this is one way to do it. It doesn't look perfect at all. Another way that you can do, of course, is select it as much as possible to your model, edit, transform, scale, and nowadays you have to hold your shift key and then you can stretch it, but as you can see here, it looks nice, but it's not 100% there. Okay, so that doesn't work. And you can, of course, use it to clone it. For example, place it here, and then, of course, do it the right way. Or, and I think that's the much better solution, just use your artificial intelligence at the moment. So select this, and hold shift make also in this part. There we go. And just press generative fill and generate. Now, when we do the backdrop, you of course have a larger area that is imagined there extra. Now, I'm shooting at a 60 megapixel camera. That means, of course, that when you use generative fill, it will show you a slightly lower resolution. Now, there's a solution for this, and I want to show you that if you didn't find it out already by yourself. Now, the moment it generated my backdrop, I always have these three options. Hello, Enrique.
Hello, Frank.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
So we always have these three options, and as you can see here, this just looks way nicer. I think this one is best. And now on top, you see this little thing, and that's actually for upscaling, so enhance detail. So when you press that, it will actually start enhancing the detail. So when, for example, you have something like a forest or a lot of trees and a lot of grass or maybe flowers, you can use the enhancing detail to make your image pop just a little bit better, instead of having that everything is sharp and then you see generative fill and it's a little bit unsharp. So that's what I wanted to show you here. But of course, I also want to show you something else. Now, this is a great shot to experiment just a little bit with what you can do with Eper T. So let's go back in Skylum Eper T. Now, this shot was done during a test shoot, and we did it really fast. So I want to see what we can do with Eper T. Of course, not on a backdrop. And to just go from zero to something zero retouch to something that's really nice. And if we can do that in just one go. Okay. Now, first thing, of course, I want to add a little bit more shadow detail. So let's add some shadow detail. It's much better to do this in RAW. And I just want to show you what's possible in Eper, because you can also use it on RAW files as a standalone. So I'm now using it as a plugin. I like this. It creates a more flatter look instead of that high contrast look. So let's go into curves and create just a little bit of contrast. Make sure you don't blow out anything. Now, of course, we also want to change the color. I'm going to show you a trick for this later on. So you can see I'm trying to get the color right, but it just isn't 100% right. It's a little bit too yellowish, as you can see. And of course you can change that with your white balance. And there we go. Cool. Let's go into the face. And let's zoom in on her face. She has a little bit of a younger skin. So you can see some blemishes over here. Let's take those out. Yeah, very impressive. Let's do the face skin. Smoothing. And for YouTube, I'm doing it on full power. So if YouTube doesn't compress a lot, this will look really bad. Normally we'll use it on maybe half power. But look at the difference already. Pretty nice. Okay, let's do a face skin color correction, see what happens. Now, when models use makeup, this often isn't necessary, but especially when you shoot somebody outside and they have this really nasty look on their skin, this can really benefit a lot. Dark circle removal. Under the eye, overdo this. This looks absolutely horrendous and not natural. This looks a little bit too much. So let's take it out like halfway. There we go. Face brighten. Do we really need it? Yes, of course. We always need a little bit of an extra pop, right? Let's go for the eyes. Now, of course, we want to take the original iris, or maybe you want to give her brown eye. Nah, doesn't look right. Let's give her honey eyes. Nah, doesn't look right, right? So let's just give the original iris in. You can give it a little bit of an iris flare. Don't overdo it, just a little bit. Redness removal. Use strokes, so we don't. This one I wouldn't touch too much. I think it makes it too blue and somehow just doesn't look natural. Eye enhancement is great because it just adds that little bit of sharpness there. Look at that. This is awesome. Look at the before and after. Yeah, really huge difference. And because I'm now zoomed in, it looks too harsh. As soon as you zoom out, this falls into place. Now, the mouth we don't need. Makeup. Let's add a little bit of a blush on the cheeks and nose. Oh, that looks like an Indian. We don't want to do that. No. Only the cheeks, maybe? Yeah. She's already wearing makeup. But hey, now that I take it out, in all honesty, this does look a lot better. So let's take it that way. Tone is okay. Change the width and the height. There we go. Nice. Contouring. Also in your makeup, as you can see here, just enhances the shadows. This is all stuff that a good makeup artist will actually do for you. But hey, if you can't afford a good makeup artist, this is awesome. This is awesome because now you get nice shading in the body of, in the face of the model. And look at the difference it already makes now. This is really nice. You can feather the sides. Now in this case, I like it harsh. You can do the highlights. Also something that a good makeup artist will do for you. Eyeliner, I don't know. Let's see what it does. Yeah, why not? It looks okay. I think this is the part where the makeup artist should do it and not the computer. But hey, but if a makeup artist again looks pretty good. Maybe make it glow. Yeah, that spreads it out just slightly better. Eyebrows enhancement, probably sharpness on the eyebrows. There we go, a little bit of pop. Nice. Lip saturation, of course. And the tone, just a little bit down. And can be a little bit darker for me. And in all honesty, I absolutely don't like the eyeliner. Great. Before, after. That's pretty cool. Yep. Nice. And of course, you can still go back to your settings here. And in this case, we didn't create an edits and a normal setting. So now it's just like Lightroom. Everything is just under one order. It's, in all honesty, I prefer, because with the presets, it's when you change one, the other ones you don't see anymore. So it's a nice system where you can stack effects. That's something that you can't do here. But on the other hand, the disadvantage is that you have a little bit more problem going back to the start of your workflow and changing stuff over. Like a lot more. Let's start adding our contrast back in the shot, because of course it was a little bit too flat for me. And there we go, before and after, all in one software package and within a few seconds. This is really impressive. I really like this. Okay, cancel. We don't need to save this. Okay, let's try some other cool stuff that you can do. Now, during the workshops, one of the things that I love to do is use one gel and one strobe with normal color. And although I want to mimic the effect of using two gels, I'm still shooting it with one. And the reason is pretty simple. When you know how color temperature works, you know that colors are on the opposites of the spectrum. So for example, red, green and blue are on the opposites of our color triangle. In the middle, there's that white point. So as long as I also have one strobe with normal light and I use one with a gel, I can manipulate and the natural lighting. So there's only one setting like this, which is straight out of the camera. But there are a million settings that you can play with. So for example, let's add some blueness to the shot and a little bit of contrast. Take out the highlights. Add some shadow detail. There we go. Okay, let's go reset. Let's add the blue, or let's take the blue out. As you can see here, no problem at all. If your client prefers a normal shot, there you go. There's a hint of blue still there, but we took it out. Let's reset. The client say he really likes it once it's subtle in there. Let's give her some skin tone back. Let's add some contrast. Let's go into curves. And there we go. And in this case, I think it's very wise to also change the bottom part. And there we go. So now we have still the hue in there, but just a slight tint of the reds in her skin. So when you shoot with one gel and normal light, when you go either back, you can go normal setting, or you can just go a little bit more crazy and creative. Same here. This was shot with normal light straight at our model Claudia, and I'm using the Rogue magnetic gel with the dome as a fill-in with the blue gel. And the blue gel just opens up the shadows. If I use the blue gel, the shadows are really dark and actually only the model will jump out. So let's see what we can do with this. So this one is a little bit too dark, so let's open that up, give it some contrast. And as you can see here, the blue is very subtle. But if I just change that to here, I can also manipulate our model's face. And that's the nice thing. You don't want white blue. So in this case, it is very beneficial to put that blue as low as possible. So you can literally, when you push that blue up, the face will just get a little bit more blue and not oversaturate. Of course, if you like that, your creativity is the limit, right? But you can also take the blue out when you use it like that, as you can see here. Now, when I overdo the blues, I can't take them out 100%. It's there. And sometimes the client likes it. Sometimes the client goes like, yeah, I don't want that blue in there. And on the day itself, he later on goes, I don't want it. So this way you can easily just take it out and put it back in. And of course you can fake it in Photoshop. But again, when you look at this, everything blends together. And when you do something like this in Photoshop, somehow it just doesn't look 100% natural for me. I just like to do it on set. Okay, here we have another shot. And this one is really nice, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the back. For me, it doesn't pop. It doesn't give me that oomph. And that has also a little bit to do, of course, with the color temperature. Now, I told you before when we did a previous shot that the colors were a little bit too yellow. So how do you prevent that? During the workshops and during your photo shoot and everything that you should always have a reference point. Now, in my case, the reference point is the color checker passport from Calibrite, as you can see here. So how does something like this create a profile? I'm not going to show you that now, but let's use it very simple. Let's go here. Okay, somehow my computer tells me he doesn't like me anymore. Weird. Okay, let's go back here and let's get our color picker, and you can just use it as white balance tool or use one of those. Now, when I copy this here, sync, do you think it will work? No, it won't, because that set, as you can see here, different light quality, because we also have continuous lighting. However, our main light was aimed at our model, and that's a strobe. And the Giotto strobes, when I use the same one, the color temperature is about equal on all sets. But when you use a set like this, where you also use your continuous lighting, it's important to show the color, including that continuous lighting. So normally when you use gels, we always advise to take the color balance without the gels, because the gels add to that atmosphere. When you want to make sure that something fits together, and you use continuous lighting, like you see here, when they emit a hue over your set, you of course have to make sure that it fits when you use the color checker with all the lights on, including the strobe. So in this case, we're just going to cool down the image slightly to get the look that I want. There we go. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of contrast. If I would have added this image in Lightroom, as you can see here, probably would have. But we're going to go into Photoshop. So let's prepare it for Photoshop. Take out the contrast. Okay, Command E. Now, as you can see, the backdrop here is not 100%. The backdrop here is not 100%. We have some stuff that I don't. This is stuff that I can't fix on location. And at that point, I don't have any problem at all by using content-aware fill, or generative fill in this case. So let's do it really fast for now. There we go. And then we got any questions.
No, but is it hard to change the microphone because it's cracking a lot? Every 20 seconds
it's too loud.
het kraakt. En dan wordt het een soort.
I will change the output of the microphone. One moment.
Gewoon even om te testen.
So I've changed the output of the microphone. So it's now a lot lower. So let's see if that works. I think that's better. Okay, so we are in Photoshop now, and let's see what it does. So it took away a little bit of my flowers. That's better, I think. This one is weird. Okay, let's go for the first one. You can always paint it back. In this case, let's paint it back a little. Good enough for now. And as mentioned before, you guys have to do this much better, of course, because you have more time. When I don't stream, I always do it more nicely. But I just want to show you the tips really fast. Okay, so it generated my backdrop. Yeah, I think this one is nice. Okay, let's flatten my image for now. I think this is okay. I could take that one out, but okay. For this image, let's go into Skylum and let's go into Neo. And of course, I can create a preset like, what should we do? Like for example, a basic preset, as you can see here, it just adds a little bit warmth to the image and it just looks nicer. But what if we want to do it really cool? So let's just quit this and let's not use any plugins. Let's just do it straight into Photoshop. So the first thing I want to do is I want to warm the image up a little bit. So let's go for a new layer. Very nice. And let's just dump in some paint. And in this case, we want to make it nice and warm. And there we go. And if you hear some typing, that's Anoweek behind me, so don't worry. It's nothing dangerous. And let's see if we can make it maybe a little bit better with hard light or, yeah. I think this is nice, but I think overall the soft light is best. And of course we want to make sure that it does power, so just a little bit. There we go. And let's make it slightly darker, so let's do this. And anyway, could you please stop for a minute? So let's make that darker. Nice. So by manipulating with your color, you are actually only adjusting that color overlay. And that gives you just a nice warm hue in your shot, as you can see here. Just adds a little bit of extra. Now, we want to make sure that our model jumps out. Now, you can create a vignette around your model, but you can also make sure that some of the highlights. Now, to create that, we are actually using the same technique as I would do with a vignette. So I am going to create a new layer. And instead of doing a normal, I'm actually going to go for soft light and fill with neutral gray. The nice thing about this layer is that every time you paint on something white brush, it will just enhance the highlights. So let's do that for now. Let's paint with a white brush. And make sure that the opacity is of course not at 100%, but slightly lower. I'm just going to go over the highlights. As you can see here, that doesn't look nice, so I'm going to make the brush a lot larger and I'm going to lower my opacity. Nice. Same here. A little bit on the chair. That's okay. The nice thing, of course, is when you do it with white, you can also do it with black. And with black, it will actually enhance the shadows. Now, it might seem I'm not doing a lot. Actually, when I look at it myself, I go like, yeah, not a lot changes. But experience tells me when I change it, it's a lot. And so, let's see the difference. As you can see, it just makes your image pop out a little bit more. Okay, now to create the vignetting, as mentioned before, I'm going to do exactly the same technique. I'm going to use a layer, a new layer. I'm going to go for a soft light, neutral gray. And the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go for my marquee. I'm going to go for elliptical, just drag it around my model, position it correctly. There we go. Select modify feather. And go for 1000. 1000 is always good. Of course, inverse, otherwise it won't go right. And now just drops in some black paint. Fit on screen. Okay, select, deselect. As you can see now we have a very nice vignette. Really draws the attention to our model. And with the opacity, we can always change it and make it darker or lighter. Nice. Layer a flatten image again because I'm streaming. I want to take the load of the computer as much as possible. This is the first time we're doing this, and up until now it goes great. So maybe next time we don't have to do that. Now I want to create something that has a little bit more pop than this. It's okay, but we want to make it oomph, right? So go back to that background, and now in this case I'm going to go for the red channel. So we already did it with the blue channel, we're now going to do it with the red channel. Command A, copy. Go back to our top layer and Command V, paste into place, and now use soft light. There we go. It gives you a little bit more of a harsher look. I really like that. And build it from 0 to hero. This is why I used a little bit more of that attention to our highlight. Now that really benefits when I do that last step. Okay. And finally, let's create a background copy. And let's go for our dots tool. Put it on highlights, 39%, and just slightly go over everything that you want to pop out. And of course also you can use your backdrop. Or maybe the chair. And the sides. Again, I'm doing it really sloppy. Look at the difference before and after. It's subtle, but it really makes those legs stand out more. But lighting, some things you can do with lighting for a very simple reason. Use a slightly wider grid to spread more over the set. Use a slightly tighter grid to make sure that that vignetting doesn't have to be added in Photoshop. But sometimes it's much wiser and much smarter also to shoot it on the set a little bit more wider. You can fix that in Photoshop by using vignetting, by adding just a little bit more shadow detail. The thing is, I don't mind using Photoshop, but I think the image should be in camera for 99.9%. And of course, you can use Photoshop afterwards. And let's be honest, you don't have to feel guilty for it. In the past, we used film rolls to get a different look in our images. The darkroom, do you really think the darkroom was just developing and printing? No, of course not. That was the first Photoshop. And it wasn't even called Photoshop. It was called the stinky place where you develop your film. But that was the first Photoshop because you can do dodging, you can do burning, you can change chemicals, oil processing. Riella looks totally different from Portra. Whatever you want to do creatively, I think Photoshop is a tool that pushes the creativity. Artificial intelligence can be a real problem when you start doing stuff like text to image. Artificial intelligence and Photoshop can be awesome. Use it to create something from nothing, but if you start to use it to enhance your images, as you can see here, extending a backdrop, creating a little bit of an extra atmosphere in your shot by creating some warmth, creating that vignetting. That's something, in my opinion, in press photography you shouldn't do. News photography, don't do it. Fashion and model photography, hey, use the modern techniques if you have them, of course. Okay, let's dive back into Lightroom for some final thoughts and some images that are more street photography related, because I know you guys love that too. So during our trip in New York, we saw these sites. I think it's a nice, doesn't really jump out at me. Now, I don't want to use anything else than Lightroom for this one. So let's first make it more straight. Now, this I think is annoying. So let's take that out. I also think we need to have a composition in my shot. You can follow the rule of thirds or the Rembrandt triangle with lighting or butterfly with lighting. There are many compositional stuff. In all honesty, just look at your image. If it flows nice, if it looks nice. And for me, it works best if my subject is on the right side of the image. As you can see here, it's on the right side of the image. The left side of the image is to breathe your image. Now, to let it breathe, if you know what I mean. Now, we call that sometimes negative space, and I think it should be related to positive space because so much to the image. When I look here, I see all those squares in the back, but I want my models to jump out just more, and that's where the vignetting comes in. Now, with Lightroom, the vignetting is from the middle, so we have to figure that out just a little bit how we're going to introduce that. But most of the times, it will work just fine by changing the midpoint slightly. Like this, make it rounder and just feather it. The difference is huge for me between a vignette or no vignette. That's a huge difference. Of course, we also want to make sure that our models have a little bit of a tint, right? The Instagram filters. Let's do that. So I'm going to use the tone curve for that. First, I'm going to take out some reds in the shadows, and I'm going to put in some reds in the highlights. Give it a little bit more of an urban look, cross-processed. Maybe take out this, and then with blue. I really like this. So from a standard image, you can very easily go into something that's more interesting. If we go to reset, it's okay. Same here. Nice, but it doesn't really jump out at me. It's too flat. There's nothing really going on. So let's see if we can find some detail back in the backdrop. There we go. Shadows, up the shadows. We compensate that with our contrast. Cool. Let's square the image. Or sorry, straighten the image. Nice. Let's give some texture. A bit of clarity. And now dehaze. It shouldn't always be used just to take out. You can actually use it to just give your image slight bump in the bottom, which I really like. In the blacks, I mean, of course. You know what I mean, right? In the bottom part of the grayscale. Cool. And same thing. And let's go for that vignetting. The attention inside the inside. And you don't need a lot, just very slightly. Look at the difference. There you go. Now if you go like, hey, it's nice, but yeah, it's nothing special. I want to have some subtle change. Always go here into those 4 rectangulars and just go in there. And as you can see here, this is where your profiles are stored. Now, when you create something with your color checker passport, you will see them in your favorites. Sorry, not in your favorites, in your custom. I just installed the computer anew, so that's why we have to do everything very quickly. So there's no part here, but normally you will see here user, and that's where your color checker passports are. But in this case, we just want to go for a slight tint. So let's go for what Adobe delivers. There we go. I really like this. I can change the amount. There we go. In all honesty, for me, this looks a lot better than it did before. And same here. I like this shot. It has to be more storytelling. Now, when I look at it, I really like that it's tight, that it's narrow, but I also like that crossing. And I shot a similar image of a wider street, and I get the same vibe from both, but the other one is a little bit more tense. So I thought like, how can I create that looks exactly how I felt that day when I look at this? So let's first straighten the image, and in this case, let's go for black and white. Add a lot of contrast, bump up the shadows, lower the highlights. And in this case, you can still use your channels. As you can see, I can even split it. I can, of course, also now still use my black and white options. See, yellow, jump out more. Greens are also nice. Is there a lot of aqua in there? No. Okay, nice. Take a vignette. And sorry. Let's select those two and just sync. And there you go. For me, those images are really nice and talking. Let's try one more. This is a great shot from Felicia. We shot this with the Lindsay Adler projector, and somehow the smoke, the Lindsay Adler projector, the dress really jumps out at me, but I want to have more. I want to have more power in that shot, right? So dive into Photoshop. And the problem that I have is I don't want to show you the same tricks that I already did. Just think that it's already there. Or what if you want to manipulate the colors in ways, so not just curves or shadows and highlights, but you want to manipulate the color smarter and more unique. Yes? Okay, let's try the following. Let's create a duplicate layer. Let's go for a layer adjustment layer. Let's go for a black and white adjustment layer. Great, right? Oh, awesome. Now it's now it's black and white. That wasn't the intention, right? No. What you can do is, of course, use it as a blending mode. For example, with luminosity. Now, you have to realize that colors consist of three coordinates: the X, the Y, and the large Y. Now, the X and the Y use saturation. The large I is luminance. Now, luminance is very important for a color. Lower the luminance of a color, your saturation will look more saturated. In other words, the color will look more saturated. Can we do the same thing with that black and white adjustment layer? Now, of course, because with black and white, we are not working with black and white. We are or not with an image where there's no color. The color is still there, but the saturation is way down. So we can still use luminance, and we can even use hue. And that's actually what we're going to do now. We're going to use the luminance. So when I want that red to jump out more, that actually means that I want that red to be darker, because then the saturation turns up. So let's just turn it down. And there we go. Nice. Now let's say that we also want the blue to be more intense. Over there, let's make that a little bit brighter. Cool. As you can see, totally shifting the color of the dress is now more saturated, more even. And I really like that. So in this case, what we're now going to do is now we're going to go into Luminar Neo. We're going to finish the shot. And you don't need a lot. We're going to need some, let me see. Yes, there we go. We need some contrast. Yes, we need some extra color without clipping channels, so vibrance. And as you can see now, the red dress now really starts to shine. We can add some details. Very nice. And finally, of course, we have to do the skin. For YouTube, again, I'm going to do it on 100%. But as you can see, the face is a little bit too dark. So let's go for a face and just give her a little bit of face lighting. And I think in Eper, the face lighting looks a little bit better. And there we go. From 0 to hero. Nice. So this saves time. And I think for now, we've done most. And I saved one final shot for last. If I'm correct. Yes. Now recently, I was asked to do a commercial shoot for sunglasses. And of course, no problem at all. The original planning was to do it in Amsterdam in about 2 or 3 hours. The problem was it was raining and we didn't trust it to do it in Amsterdam, and because they were flying in from the UK, we had to think of something, and the immediately was let's do it in our studio, and if it's raining and otherwise we're going to drive to Urk, that's about a 10-minute drive, and let's just do the photos there. And then you have something in the back as from a harbor, and well, that fits the style of the sunglasses, for commercial, whatever. They loved the idea. The only problem was we didn't calculate it correctly, because I thought they had to be back in Amsterdam at around 4. Yeah, that's the same thing that they thought. The only problem was they had to be there 2 hours in advance, because otherwise they couldn't board. And that meant that I believe the whole photo shoot had to be done in 12 minutes. Another one, believe it or not, we actually did it in 12 minutes. This is only one of the shots. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is not I'm not going to show you all the other shots, but just a few tips. If you have such a limited time, make some images with strobes and some images without. Now, when you use a set like the G-Code or the hybrid strobes, they have this option called ETTL. Now, ETTL means that it will correct the strobe the same way that you normally shoot in, for example, auto aperture mode or auto shutter priority mode, where the camera just figures out everything and just takes the shot. This shot was done with ETTL because I have to work really, really fast. The nice thing is, when you have something like this, you can still go to a commercial shoot very, very fast, even within a Lightroom. And the only problem is the strobe. Can we take that out in Lightroom? Yes, you can. So let's see how far we can get into Lightroom. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we take out our object. So here I'm also using generative AI. And there we go, we don't have to change anything. Now, if you do want to change something, you can always go here for 1, 2, 3. As you can see, this one, nice. And this is great. So we're done. So that's done. You can see a little bit of a corner here. So yeah, that would be probably better in Photoshop or just fine tune it. But for now, let's leave it. Okay, first things first, I want to create something that looks like I use a lot of strobe power. So open up the shadows, there's a lot of contrast here. Okay, let's, oh, sorry, I have to be in global mode. There we go. This is really fine-tunable, as you can see here. Love it. Flatten out the sky just a little bit, that it doesn't give me too much attention, and then do that with the middle slider. Make sure that the highlights are nice and even. Okay. Now, when I look at a shot like this, it's okay, but I still want that vignetting in. Okay, this is better. And I still want to give it my look right, and give something a look. It has to fit for the mood. Now, when I look at this, I go like, okay, it's a dark day, it's a cloudy sky, we use strobes. Let's give them a little bit more contrast, by the way, and some exposure. But I also don't want to make it too dark by going, for example, with a, so let's just warm up the shot very, very slightly. So let's go into color grading, and this is absolutely the part that I love to use. Color grading is one of my favorite things to do, because this is where the shot literally just gets its look. So we have highlight shadows, and start with the mid-tones and just slightly warm it up, not too much. We're going to do the same thing for the shadows, slightly warm it up, but more towards magenta. And the highlights, I'm actually going to add just a tint of blue. And there we go. I just gave the shot a totally different look. Now, the look that you like, I don't know. It is a look that's totally different from where we started. Just for fun, this is where you start. So, yeah, and you do it all in Lightroom. Now, in all honesty, this looks really bad, really bad. So that's one part that I would do differently, and probably select it again. And you can actually remove this. And just refresh. I think I'm making it worse now. There we go. Let's make the size slightly bigger. So now I have a more bigger brush. And let's do remove again. And sometimes it's just too harsh. The same thing with content aware fill. Most of the times it works like a charm. Yeah, it's a little bit hit and miss sometimes. Yeah, let's go for that one and close. I think we have the same problem here, as you can see. Okay. So this is something that I'm in Photoshop. Just take out the thing here, and let's try that, by the way, just for fun. Let's see if it works better. Command E, go into Photoshop. And the lasso. And use generative fill. And let's see if the Lightroom version is indeed the same as in Photoshop, and I don't think so. And another thing that you can do in Photoshop is, of course, if you have that selection, you can also choose to feather it. I'm going to show you that in a second. Look at that. That's already much better. But let's say that you don't like that effect and you want to feather it. You can always go into your quick mask, take a brush, and of course, select the part. As you can see now, because I'm using a softer brush, I have a very soft selection. The thing that you have to be careful for is if I press now, everything will be gone except on the softbox, and that's of course not the idea. So let's do inverse and do generative fill. And as you can see, the result will be exactly the same because it already nicely feathered that selection, and Lightroom didn't do that. So sometimes when you do stuff like this, it's better to go into Photoshop, and as you can see, it's faster. You have the layers where you can easily just take stuff out and put stuff in again. So yeah, I think Photoshop rules for this kind of stuff. Okay, I want to see what happens when we put the red channel on there, just for fun. That looks better. Gives it a little bit more of a raw look. Okay, great. Let's go back to our normal feed. So today it was all about retouching, how I use Lightroom, how I use Photoshop, and how I use plugins. Now, I'm mostly capable of working with lighting. I love to light my subjects, and I think with lighting you can be incredibly creative. Photoshop for me is a vital part of the workflow for the very simple reason you can't do everything on the set. There are some things that you later on in Photoshop, and that's no problem. The thing is, and I hope I made it clear today, is Photoshop is not something to fix laziness. Photoshop is something to fix something that holds back your creativity. It's the same thing when, for example, I advertise for Topaz Photo AI. A lot of people say, hey, that's artificial intelligence, that's bad, that's evil. It only takes out noise and it sharpens it. I think there's a clear distinction between something that isn't yours and that's stolen. Literally, when you type in something and art comes out, that's not yours, that's stolen, that's nothing to do with creativity. However, if you take and everything is in order. You love that cosplay look. You love the lighting. You love all the reflections in there. The only thing you can't get right is that science fiction backdrop. Let me show you very quickly what I mean. And I don't think there's any problem by doing that at that moment. So let's go to my portfolio. And let me answer some questions in between. Let me see. Aha. Oh, hoe ik denk, AI, nice. Michael asks, I want to see what you think about using AI with editing. So I'm just going to explain that to you guys. So I'm going to go for portfolio and then I'm going to switch back to my main screen. So one moment. Let me see. Okay, so let's go back to this. There we go. So, for example, when I shoot my normal fashion work, and you go through my portfolio, I think it's very clear that we don't use any artificial intelligence here. Lens flares like this are 100% real, as you can see. And I'm using that KNF Concept Black Mist filter that really helps to smooth out your lens flares. But everything you see here is real. These are real lights. And I think that just blends everything nicely together. The moment I'm starting to use artificial intelligence, that's actually for a different purpose. And that's, for example, when you go to heroes and villains. Now, part of this is 100% real. But images like this, the blood is fake, the trees are fake. But we literally knew what we were going to do. This is a story we wanted to tell with our model Felisa for Halloween. And literally every shot was planned. And we knew this is going to be the backdrop. This is going to be happening here. So we have to place the lighting there. Make sure there's smoke there, because we have to make sure that the smoke comes out of the trees. And we have to make sure that there are shadows there. So use the Lindsay Adler projector to already create those stripes. And then when you create that backdrop intelligence, it just fits. And still it looks terrible, fake, but in a good way. It just fits together. But when you just imagine something like, for example, this image, I just started playing around. And as you can see here, it looks terribly fake. It is a fun shot, but this is not something I would sell as my work. For the very simple reason, I shot Nadine on the Brooklyn Bridge. That is all real. Everything else is fake. So is this really my work? I think if I would have painted everything in, I would have said to people, yeah, that's my work. I draw that, I put the lights in. In all honesty, this is just artificial intelligence where you type destroy the Brooklyn Bridge and put in some lights and put in some lens flares. The reason it's on my portfolio is very simple. I like the shot, so why not? And that's why it's in the folder Heroes and Villains. Everything else that you see here, by the way, this is all real. There is no lens flare. It is real smoke and real lens flares. However, here, that's a fake. But, and look very closely, let me see, where was it? That light is 100% real, as you can see here. And that's the thing that I meant. When you use artificial intelligence to add light, it will never give you a proper highlight and shadow play. And that's where, for me, artificial intelligence stops. If I wouldn't have used the backlighting, I would never use that backlighting in artificial intelligence, or in this case, Boris FX. Just depends on what you label. I think everything that you add could be labeled as artificial intelligence because it wasn't there before. Now, as soon as you start talking about more complicated setups, like this one we shot during a one-on-one workshop, this is 100% planned from the start. We knew we're gonna have lights there. Where are the lights from the side? What color are they gonna be? Right side left, that side blue. So I used strobes on both sides to mimic that light. Now later on in Photoshop we created the corridors, but because the smoke was there and the colors were there, everything just blended together, and you don't have to do a lot with trying to glue it. It just works. And that's the nice thing about thinking ahead. And at that point, I don't have any problems with using artificial intelligence. I wish we would have had it a few years ago. And yeah, just use it creatively. Let me see if I have another example of that. I have to find there we go. So with this is a lot of artificial intelligence. But the base is 100% real. The backdrop is a click backdrops. It's actually one of my favorites with all those nice flowers. This is our model, 100% real. The whip, you might think it's fake. No, it's 100% real. We actually had an extension on top where the whip was on, and she literally just pulled on the whip trying to get up. The lighting, fake? No, absolutely real. We had a strobe up here aiming down at our model because I knew I wanted to have her in like a cellar with all snakes on the floor, and she has to climb out. What is fake? All this stuff, this is Boris FX. All those particles, Boris FX is great for that. The snakes, well, those are fake. The spider webs are fake, and of course the whole top is fake. However, because we planned it in the front, it looks nice for me. It doesn't look like it's, oh, let's have a model here and let's imagine something that it looks nice. This was all planned beforehand. Okay, so that's my opinion about using artificial intelligence in your photography. Because Michael also asks. Okay, anyway, anything more to say to our attendees?
The next classroom is January 15th.
Okay.
About
the Lindsay Adler project, yes. The next digital classroom will be on January 15th. And that will be with the Lindsay Adler projector. Next year we want to do more about creativity, creative uses of light. And now that we know that I can retouch without losing my connection to the internet, which on the M1 Pro was a problem, this is the M4 Pro. And it works like a charm, so we're going to keep using that one. We're going to do a little bit more also retouching during digital classroom. If you have any questions, leave them in the questions below. I hope you enjoyed this special episode about retouching. I hear that the audio sometimes was a little bit bad. I hope that didn't take you out of the story. And we're going to fix that, of course, the next time when we have proper time to set everything.